All right, Photo Joseph, the stage is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. For those of you joining me bright and early, welcome and I appreciate that. Hope everybody's doing great today. I am Photo Joseph. My role in the world is a content creator. Started in still photography and moved into video production, and that has just kind of grown and grown. I have a YouTube channel under Photo Joseph. Many of you may know me from there. And I do a lot of education. Most of my videos are kind of education based. I also do a lot of education based projects for myself and for clients. And what we're talking about today is very much about an education style production that I was involved with. So the premise of today's thing, as you've seen the title, as you see on the slide right now, remote production with a client inclusive workflow. And this was born largely out of COVID, as you might imagine. So I'm going to let's get the right screen forward so I can actually advance my slides. There we go. So we're going to start with a story. It's story time. Let me just tell you why this production came to be, why this happened, and then I'm going to go into the how and the technical details and so on. So this started pre-COVID is when this started. I was hired by Panasonic. I'm actually a Panasonic Lumix ambassador, and so I do a lot of work with Panasonic. And I was hired by them to do a series of training videos on the new Lumix S5 at the time. And these were videos for their channel. That was the whole idea. So a series of educational videos. And originally the client, one of the reps from Panasonic, or possibly a couple of people, were going to come out to my studio in Oregon. We were going to set up shop here. We're going to do a very traditional producer, client, director, whatever kind of a workflow where they're in here guiding me through the whole thing. And we're going to knock it out in a couple of weeks and it was going to be great. Then COVID hit. And so clearly travel stopped. Their company had a very hard stop on travel. There was absolutely no exceptions. And so the project kind of got shelved. But I didn't want that because number one, I kind of needed the work, right? I mean, I had enough stuff lost from COVID. I'm like, I got to figure out a way to make this thing happen. And so I came up with a workflow that would allow us to do this remotely, where the client wouldn't be here physically, but would be here in spirit, in video, in audio, and essentially make it as much as possible like as if they were actually here in person. And so that was the premise for what I did, kind of the reasons behind it. So let's start off with a basic description of my normal shooting setup. Forget about the client production, forget about the remote for a moment. We're just talking, I'm shooting some videos, whether I'm doing a live video, whether I'm doing it as a recorded video for YouTube, for client, whatever, kind of basic setup. So it starts with the cameras. Just kind of the way that I like to work multicam. And this whole process really benefits from a multicam workflow, but you could do it all with one camera. I shoot with 5 cameras, 5 Lumix BGH1s, and we'll talk a little bit more about the cameras as we go, but I have a 5 camera setup. So there's 5 cameras, there's me. Audio isn't actually set up going through the camera, but for the sake of this illustration, that just makes it easier. It doesn't really matter. Audio is obviously there. We have microphone on me going through the system. So if you guys want to talk audio towards the end, feel free to throw it into the Q&A and we can talk about that more as we go at the end if we have time. Anyway, so 5 camera setup, audio obviously, and me. So there's just the basics. I feed all of my cameras into an ATEM. This is the Blackmagic ATEM mixer. Now I'm using quite a large one, the ATEM 2ME, which is a 4K mixer. And this is important to my specific workflow. However, as you'll see as we go, and I'm going to talk about this kind of interject as we go, there are ways to reduce the cost significantly of what I'm showing you as what I do as a way to reproduce this. So I have a 4K switcher that is actually not necessary for the overall workflow of what we're talking about. It does provide some benefits, however. So I've got this big old 4K switcher. And if you're not familiar with the ATEM lineup, although I kind of feel like everybody is these days, the Blackmagic ATEM is a live production switcher. Its whole idea is you take multiple cameras in, you have buttons on there to go camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and so on, picture in picture, graphics and all that good stuff. But at its core, it is a switcher designed for live events. But in my case here, for this type of production, not doing it live, which is fine. You can still use it even if you're not doing a live event. So all of my cameras go into the 4K switcher. Next up, and this is why I feed them into the switcher for my own, just sitting there recording a video use, I get something called the multi-view out. Now, the multi-view is a single display that shows all of the camera inputs, up to 8 inputs simultaneously. And the illustration you see on your screen right there, it shows the way that it looks by default: 2 big images on the top half, and then 8 smaller images on the bottom half. The 8 smaller images on the bottom are up to 8 cameras at once, and the top 2, if you are doing a live production, are your preview and your program, so what's about to go to air and what's on air. In the case of a situation like this, I don't care. Preview, program doesn't matter to me. It's just 2 windows where I can see any one of my camera angles, or any 2 of my camera angles, larger. This is sitting on a big TV that is just out of camera. So it's, I don't know, let's say a 40-inch TV, and it's nothing special. It's not even 4K. It's just an HD TV, which is fine because the multi-view out is only HD. It's not 4K. It's just a big screen for me to see all of my camera angles at once. So let's say I'm looking at the camera here. I can just, I've got sitting right over here, this big old TV, and I can look at it, and I can, okay, I should be stand here. I can look at my overhead and go, yeah, I'm going to adjust my thing. And I'm looking over there, my over the shoulder. Oops, that camera's not right. Change that. So I have this easy way to see all of my camera angles at once. So I use it both while doing a setup. So I'm, like I just explained, setting everything up, but then while I'm shooting, so while I'm recording, okay, I know right now I'm shooting an overhead component. I don't need to look into the camera to do the overhead. Obviously I'd be looking down at what I'm doing with my hands, but I can look over at the display, at the multi-view, and see that I'm holding it in a good position, that it looks good on camera. Oh, I should probably tilt it a little bit more. Yeah, that's a better way to hold it. Redo that line, whatever, that sort of thing. It just allows me to see all of the cameras at once. If you didn't have the switcher, if you didn't have the multi-view, then it would essentially be like having 5 separate monitors sitting in front of me with each camera, except that it's all concatenate, whatever. It's all combined, there's the word, into one display. So this is great, and this is how I would normally work. Now, at this point, for any kind of production, you could kind of stop here, because you can, of course, record in the cameras, right? Every camera, obviously, no matter what camera you're using, you can hit record on the camera and start recording your show there, which is great. But why would I stop there? I wanted to make this more fun, more interesting. So here's my next step. My next step is a series of Blackmagic HyperDeck recorders. And I do this for a lot of different reasons. Number one, it allows me to record to ProRes. Instead of recording to a H.264 and H.265 file in camera, I'm recording to ProRes. So it's a much bigger file, it's a higher quality file, but most importantly, it is a easier to edit file. And when you're doing 5-stream 4K 30 multicam, it's nice to take some of the resources off of the computer, not have to have it decoding H.265 or H.264 on the go, and of course not having to do proxy files, because when you're working with straight ProRes, you don't need proxy files unless you're on like a really, really little machine. So that gives me that capability. Plus, it gives me, so I'll kind of run through the list of what it gives me. It gives me ProRes. It gives me the ability to trigger recording from multiple cameras at once, so in multiple recorders at once. We'll talk about how I do that in a moment. But the fact is that I can trigger recording on multiple cameras at once and stop recording on multiple cameras at once. If I was recording in the cameras, there's a variety of different ways that you could do this. And so again, for those who want to do this idea, but kind of scale back on the cost, you don't have to have the HyperDecks, right? You can absolutely still record in camera. So how are you going to start and stop recording in camera? Well, at its most basic, you just run up to each camera and hit the record button. Obviously, you can do that. Kind of a drag when you got 5 cameras, especially if one's an overhead and you have to get up on a ladder to do it, but that's possible. A kind of next step solution to that would be to use a wired or wireless remote. And these can be really easy dummy remotes. These don't have to be expensive OEM remotes. You can buy third-party remotes on Amazon for like 15, 20 bucks a piece that are wireless and work with any number of cameras. And they're not going to give you any advanced functionality, but it's basically the half press to focus, full press to start recording. And before I installed the BGH1 cameras and before I had the HyperDecks in place, I did exactly that. And I even brought my old setup here. I had a series of, you can look at the camera, you can see this 6 right? Because that's right, I do have 6 cameras, 6 recorders, 6 remote controls, all kind of attached to this board. They're actually on Velcro, so if I want to take one off, I can. And I would have this sitting down where I could half press each one to check focus, and then I could full press if I need to start recording in camera. So this gives me the ability to start and stop recording without having to run back and forth with the camera. I don't use this anymore, but that is a way you could do this without the HyperDecks. Okay. The other way you could do this, if you're using the BGH1 or BS1H cameras, as I am, the Lumix cameras, those cameras give you complete control over the camera on an app on your computer across the network. So I can pull up all of the cameras at once, and I can go in and I can go through each one individually and change exposure settings and so on. Obviously, once you get that set, you're leaving it, but can change exposure settings. I can adjust white balance. I can change focus, and I can start and stop recording. And you actually have an option in the Lumix software to group, let's say, all 5 cameras and hit record, and it will start recording in all 5 cameras. So if you're not going to do the HyperDeck option, you're going to record in camera. Your options are run up to each camera and push the button physically, use some kind of remote, either wired or wireless, like the system that I just showed you, or if you're using cameras like the BGH1, then you have access to it over the network. Okay, so there's that setup. But for me personally, the way I'm doing it is I'm recording into the HyperDecks. So the HyperDecks, again, give me ProRes. They give me the ability to start and stop with a remote, which we're going to talk about next. And they also allow me to access those files over the network. So instead of having to pop SD cards, I can go onto my computer, FTP the files from those drives over to, from that bank of recorders over to my computer. Super cool. Okay, so there's my basic setup there. And then we get into the control component of it. So you'll see there, it's kind of small down here, but I've got a laptop and an iPad. So on the laptop, okay, I realize I made those icons really small, but you'll see 3 app icons on there. The one on the top right is the Lumix Tether app. That's the one that allows me to control the cameras. Cool. The bottom one is the ATEM app. So from the ATEM app, this is the ATEM software control. What I can do is control the ATEM over the network, and I can say, oh, give me the overhead camera up on the program. So I get to see that big. Oh, let me switch to the over the shoulder camera, to the top down camera. I want to see those big. So I'm not doing live. It's not about doing a live switch. It's just about saying, oh, I want to see that particular angle on a larger view. That's what that allows me to do. And that's at its most basic. But then you add in this little tiny icon here. That's called, where is it? There we go. That little tiny icon there. That's Companion. So Companion is a free open source service that supports a mind-boggling number of different types of cameras, switchers, all kinds of recording live production type based hardware that is accessible over the network. So things that are IP controllable, odds are there is a module to control that. So all the ATEM switchers can be controlled from that. All the HyperDecks can be controlled from that. I can't control the Lumix cameras over that, unfortunately. No one's written a module for that, but I don't need to because I'm not actually doing anything to the cameras once they're set up. I'm doing everything for the recorders. So with Companion, I can set up things like start and stop recording in the HyperDecks. Like, let's make it easy, right? Start and stop recording, start, stop 1, start and stop 2, and so on. I can gang them up. I can make a button that starts recording all 5 at once and stops all 5 at once. Or what I have is I have the single recording buttons for each one, for each camera. And then I have a couple of grouped ones for common. If I'm going to shoot just a talking head, I always shoot my 2 front cameras, the wide and the tight. So I have one button that starts cameras A and B. Always. If I'm going to do A, B, and D, which might be a common combination, I'll have that as a button. One button starts all 3 of those. That's cool. I don't always use the combo start buttons because I tend to work with a slate a lot and I want to hold up the slate. So I'll hold up the slate and go, okay, start 1 and 2. I use that combo button, and then I'll get my slate in the overhead position, holding that under the camera, and then I'll start camera C or whatever it is, and so on and so on. But I do always use the stop all cameras button. So one button stops all 5 cameras at once. Super handy. The other thing that I can do with Companion that you can't do with the HyperDeck hardware on its own, which is one of those kind of, gee, Blackmagic, give me a little, drop me a bone here. Within the Blackmagic software on its own, you have no way to name the files how you want them. The files just get, I don't know, HyperDeck and a number. It's like totally useless. From Companion, I can completely customize the file names that get written to each file when I hit record. So I can put my project name, I can put my scene and take number in there, I can put a date and timestamp. All that information is in there. So every file that gets written to the HyperDeck has unique information: camera angle, project name, scene take, timestamp, all that is embedded into the file name. So super, super useful right there. So I love that. So that's a big part of using Companion. The iPad that you see over here, the way that Companion works is it's running on a computer that is obviously on the same network as all this stuff. Companion can be controlled from its own web page there, but what it really does is it publishes a web page on your intranet that is a series of buttons. It is basically the buttons that you've designed, which you can then use an iPhone, an iPad, anything to control. If you want to get physical about it, you can use something called the Elgato Stream Deck. And they're really, really very much designed to work together. The Elgato Stream Deck gives you physical buttons that you can push. However, the Elgato Stream Deck is a USB device that has to be physically connected to the computer that is running the Companion service. So what I do is I leave Companion running on my system here that I'm talking to you on today. This is my main computer, while I'm out in the other room doing the recording in the main recording studio. So then what I have is just an iPad that is loaded, has loaded that web page, and I can control the buttons, control the decks and everything from there. So that just gives me a wireless way to control it. And in addition to the start and stop recording buttons and so on, I have buttons to reformat the disks in the HyperDecks, which is really handy because in the HyperDeck to do it, you have to go, I don't remember, like let's say 5 menus deep to do it. And when you got 6 of them, it can take a while. So I have on mine, I have a button that I have to, it's a way it's set up as a safety thing. I tap the button once, and then I have to tap it again within, I forget, whatever. I basically have to do a double tap to make it format so I can't accidentally format. So that's really cool. And I have it like on a page buried deep into the system so I can't accidentally get to it. But it allows me to do stuff like that as well. Okay, so that's my setup. So again, we're not talking remote at all. This is just my production. And I've been doing it this way, evolved over the years, of course, but I've been doing it essentially like this for a really long time. Having that multi-view is fantastic. The multicam is just how I like to work. And then, routing it through the switcher gives me that flexibility. It also gives me the flexibility to do all of this live if I want to, which is pretty slick. Okay, so this is my regular setup. So now I've got this problem where my client can't be there. How are we going to solve this? All right, first step. First step is, that's not the first step. What just happened to my slides? Let's try that again. There we go. I don't know why that did that. Okay, first step. Well, there's my client. There's my remote client that wants to call in. Somewhere in the world, they are not here in the studio. I want to bring them into the picture. So how do I do this? First thing, set up a computer, running Skype, and we just do a regular old Skype call. Now, why Skype, not Zoom? Skype gives better quality, and that's going to become very important in just a moment here. But Skype is you're going to get full HD connection back and forth. This brings them virtually into my studio. I can see them, they can see me, I can hear them, they can hear me. I mean, this is obvious. We've done this a billion times since COVID started. This is what we're doing. It's just a Skype call. But the first really important component of this is what I'm feeding them over Skype. I'm not feeding them just a webcam. They're not looking at my camera one. Notice that my Skype machine is connected to my multi-view. They are getting my multi-view. So they can see all of my camera angles live. They see every single camera angle that I've got going at once, which if they were here in person, they would be able to see all these. They'd be able to look at the multi-view. They'd be able to walk around my studio and look at the different angles. Obviously, they still can't walk around, but they can see all the different camera angles that I'm giving them. So that multi-view becomes a really important component of that. Technically, how you feed the multi-view in is going to depend largely on your setup. But for me, I'm bringing a well, the multi-view comes out of the ATEM as an HDMI. So you take that HDMI and maybe go into a splitter that you can send the HDMI into a television as you need, and then also into a HDMI to USB converter on your computer. Or honestly, probably the cheapest way to do this would be to use a original ATEM Mini, the original $299 ATEM Mini. And the reason for that is it has multiple HDMI inputs, but you only need one of them. You're going to feed in the multi-view coming out of your main ATEM. And then that ATEM Mini can be USB connected to your computer, to your laptop, whatever, so that running Skype sees that ATEM as a webcam, which is going to make it see that multi-view. And then that little baby ATEM also has a HDMI out, which you plug into your big TV. So all you're really using it for is a way to bring in HDMI and route that HDMI simultaneously to a TV and to your laptop, but it is probably the most efficient way to do it. If you use a splitter, a lot of splitters don't work with the ATEM, so you got to find one that does, or you got to go through HDMI to SDI conversions and back and forth and so on. The way that I actually have mine set up, because it is irrelevant to this setup, what I'm showing you, I don't have it included in here, but I'm actually using a what's called a video hub 40 by 40. It's this big video matrix where instead of the cameras going into the ATEM, all the cameras and a bunch of other inputs go into the video hub. And then coming out of the video hub, they go into the switcher and a bunch of other places. So I'm actually routing via SDI to my television. The television is just a cheap HDMI TV. So it goes into a SDI to HDMI converter, HDMI out into the TV, and then a second SDI tap out or pass through SDI goes into an SDI to USB converter into the computer. Again, I kind of took it up a few levels, totally unnecessary for what I'm explaining here. Just an HDMI to USB converter is all you need. Okay, so they are seeing my multi-view, which also means that instead of just looking at Skype on their little computer screen, what they can do is hook up a big TV to their computer. So this is exactly what my client did. They sat in their living room with their laptop or whatever connected to the Skype call, and then connected that to their big 50-inch TV on the living room. So they're seeing on a huge monitor my full layout. So they're not looking at it on a little screen. They got a huge screen so they can really see what is happening. That is fantastic. Okay, so that's good enough for the most part. But let's take it to the next level, because why not? I don't want to just give them the ability to see what I'm doing. I want to give them the ability to control certain aspects of it. I want them to have the ability to change which of the 8, well, in my case, 5 small camera views from the multi-view are loaded up into the big one. This is for multiple reasons. For one, it gives them the ability to go, I want to have a closer look at the overhead camera. I don't need to bother Joseph and say, hey, can you switch to the overview? They just do it. They can switch to the overhead. It gives them the ability to make the switch when I want to. So if I'm, hands down, kind of, I'm doing something, setting up, and I go, hey, could you switch over to the overhead for me? Okay, thanks. Give me the front view as well. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, good. Yeah, we're good. It gives me the ability to tell them what to do instead of me having to set, oh, now I'm going to do switch. Oh, now I'm going to do switch. So it gives them the control of that. So that's one of a couple of benefits from it. It also just makes them feel more involved, right? The client now is more involved. They're not just sitting there on a Skype call. They're actually doing something to be part of the production. Also, what I want to do is I want to give them the ability to start and stop recording, because that way I don't have to be the one hitting the button, right? We can go through everything. Okay, we're all set up. We're ready to go. I can hold up the slate and I can say, yep, we're ready. Okay, go ahead. And they can say rolling on cameras 1 and 2. And I can physically see the bank of hyperdecks. So I can verify, yep, the lights came on, 1 and 2 are recording. Okay, we're good. Move my slate into the overhead position. Okay, go ahead and start rolling camera 3. He starts rolling it. Okay, good. So he has that control. The same kind of things that I would have somebody else doing if they were in the studio with me. I'd be like, well, you push the buttons. It's going to make my life easier and give you something to do. So I want to give them all that capability. How am I going to do that? Well, to do that, we set up a VPN. Now, the VPN is going to, well, let me just go to the next part. So the VPN, they can then connect over VPN to my studio, and then they can connect to any of my software as if they were here. So they can run the ATEM software. They can run the companion web page with all the virtual buttons on it. They could even connect to the Lumix Tether app and control the cameras from there. Although, again, we don't need to for this case, but they could. Primarily what they're doing is loading up the ATEM software and or the companion software, giving them that control. They can switch the camera angles, they can start and stop recording, they can do all of that. So they're probably going to do that on a separate computer, but whatever, they've got the ability to do that. Now, setting up a VPN can definitely be a bit complicated. You have to have the right hardware to do it. So you don't have to do it that way. What you could also do instead is a simple screen share. So using any number of screen sharing services, I use something called Jump software. I think it's just fantastic, but there's a million different services out there for doing screen sharing. They could just do a screen share to this computer, right? You set up this computer so they can just screen share, and then they're controlling your computer and watching the screen. That would work too. But doing it over the VPN gives them the ability to run the software natively on their end. It's just cleaner. They're not actually seeing the screen. It's just a better experience overall. But you could do it by doing a screen share. Okay, so that's that setup, right? That's how all that works. So let's talk a little bit about how we can make this cheaper. How we can make this a little bit more economical. Actually, I'm going to take a quick look at the questions. Oh, someone asked me a long time ago to lower my mic level. Sorry, I I can move it farther away, but that's about all I can do right now. Andy says, can you use HyperDex to record camera feed individually and locally and use the ATEM to live stream? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is what I would do if I was doing a live show where I wanted the ability to re-edit later. So if you're familiar with the ATEM Mini lineup, there's the ATEM Mini, and then with the ISO and the name, with the ISO and the name allows you to record all inputs and your program simultaneously, but it's recording it as HD. It's not a 4K switch, and it's recording it to a just an MP4 file. It's not ProRes. What I can do with this setup is I can record all my inputs in 4K and ProRes, whether I'm doing live or not, do the same thing. And then I can also take the program out into an encoder to live stream. Now, the big ATEM, this 2ME, doesn't have a built-in encoder, but you just take your program out and you feed that into any number of encoders out there. You could, at the cheapest, you could feed it into a computer running OBS, or at the higher end, you could run it into something like a Blackmagic web presenter, an Epiphan Pearl, or any other number of encoders that are out there. So absolutely, you can do that. So you can do a live show. If you're using a Pearl, or I guess now Blackmagic has a web presenter 4K, you could stream in 4K and record all the ISOs in 4K. Or what's more likely is you stream in HD and record the ISOs in 4K for re-editing later. What you won't get out of this, however, is the XML file from all your switches. That's something you only get with the ATEM Mini lineup. So your ATEM Mini Pro ISO or your ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. Then you get the XML file, which is certainly convenient, but you don't get that with the setup that I have here. Okay, so let's see, one more question. How do you manage the cable runs for your setup? There's a lot of cables. Sound, power, sound, HDMI. Okay, let's leave that question up on screen. If we have time, I'll come back to that because that's another quite big topic. And if I showed you the back of my rack, you would be terrified. It's kind of embarrassing, and it's not as clean as it could be. But my excuse is that I change things all the time, so I don't really tie in all my cables. Anyway, we can talk about that later if we have time. Okay, so I wanted to talk about lowering the cost. So I already said that you could use a regular ATEM Mini instead of the 2ME. So the regular ATEM Mini will cost up to, so the 4-input one, it's I think $600 is the most expensive one. The ATEM Mini Extreme, which gives you 8 inputs, is going to cost you, was it $1,100 or $1,200, depending if you get the ISO model or not. So that's your kind of higher end cost for the switcher. This ATEM 2ME, I think, is $4,000. So it's quite a bit higher. If you're using the smaller ATEMs, then you're not going to be passing through to the HyperDex, right? That's not an option you're going to have. However, what you could do is record in the cameras. If you're using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, then you can record in camera in 4K or 6K if you're using one of the 6K models, and you can trigger that recording from the ATEM. So this is one of those where I have to admit that this is a pretty slick setup. If you like, or if you have the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera setup, then you can have a bank of these BMC, PC, whatever, the cinema pocket cinema cameras. The name's too big. Plugged into your ATEM. Your client can be viewing the multi-view, and when you hit record, you're going to be recording not only the ISO file on the program, which you're probably just going to throw away anyway. You're going to be recording Blackmagic RAW in all of your Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. You don't have the naming control that you get through this system into the HyperDex, so you are giving up a couple things there, but it is a pretty slick way to go. So if your studio is based around Pocket Cinema cameras, that's something to consider. If you want to shoot into B-RAW like that, that's a pretty awesome way to go. So that's another way you can do it to bring the cost down. But like the absolute cheapest way you could do this, I think, would be to use one of the small ATEMs, right? One of the little baby ones. Let's just say you're doing 4 cameras. You only need 4 inputs. So one of the baby ATEMs, you feed your 4 cameras in there. You start whatever cameras you've got. Doesn't matter. You got Lumix, you got Sony's, you got Canon's. Doesn't matter. You just feed those cameras in. You're just feeding HD into the switcher. Your client still sees the multi-view just like we've got here. Forget about the HyperDex. And in the cameras, you start recording like you normally would. Again, either run up and push the button on it, but spend $100, build yourself a little bank of these things, and then you've got a really easy way to do that all from one place instead of having to run around. Massive time saver there. So that's really slick. Okay, so that's that part of the setup. Now let's see, how are we on time? Excellent. Now I want to talk a little bit about the post-production part. This is a bit minimal on here, but I just want to kind of go through this process of how we did this. So I said in the beginning, one of the things I like about the HyperDecks is that I can access the files over the network. So instead of popping out 6 SD cards and running them, back to my computer, I can access them over FTP. So I use Transmit. I can load up them all, and I've got presets in Transmit where I just select the recorders, double click them. They all open up so the way they open up is on the right side, I see the HyperDeck with all the files. And on the left side, I see a specific predefined folder on my computer. I just select all, drag over. So I just click on 6 tabs, click 5 tabs, however many I'm using, click, drag over, and they all start copying over the network. Yes, this is considerably slower than doing it over the SD cards. Absolutely. But if I'm not in a rush, I just want to start recording and walk away, or I've just got small files to transfer. I just did something quick. It's only a couple of gigs or whatever. Then this is definitely a more efficient way to do it. So I have both options. And in the interest of performance, so the HyperDecks, when they first shipped, it's kind of funny. They were first shipped with 100 megabit transfer speeds, which is obviously painfully slow. At some point in a software update, and I'm talking about the older HyperDecks, they got an upgrade to gigabit. And you're like, what? Why wasn't that there from the beginning? But you got gigabit off of each one. The new ones that you buy today all have gigabit default, but that's still maximum 1 gig, right? If you have 6 decks and you got a 1 gig pipe, well, it's all going to have to squeeze through 1 gig. So what I've installed in my studio is a 10 gig switch. And I have from my Mac Pro, which has got 10 gig Ethernet built into it. I have a direct connection from Ethernet connection from my Mac Pro into my 10 gig switch. Each of the HyperDecks is also plugged into the 10 gig switch, which, by the way, the HyperDecks run on PoE plus. And so my 10 gig switch is a PoE plus switch. All of the HyperDecks are getting power from the switch, which is it's nice cable management for Mustafa, who asked about cable management. That's one big part of it. Get rid of power cables. But then I've got 10 gigs of bandwidth. And so all 6 of them can copy over. And at that point, I've done a bunch of tests. They tend to run about 800 megabit each when I'm copying over. So I don't get full gig off of each one. I get about 800 each. And so it's pretty good. It's, again, if you got a huge amount of files to transfer, you're not going to want to sit around. It's going to be faster to pop the SD cards. But if you don't have a huge amount of files, or you just want to start the copy and walk away, it's a great way to do it. It's a fantastic way to do it. So it's nice to have that option. Okay. Then I run my files through an app called Kino. Now, here's where I have to say, I love Kino. Don't buy it. And here's why. Very sadly, Kino, the company, was bought by another company. Ever since then, they've evaporated. There's no support anymore. You go to their website, they're still selling licenses, but you can't get support. I've emailed the company. I've gone after them on Twitter, on social media. I've gone after their new owners on social media. I've contacted the founders directly because I have their email addresses. Nothing. They're radio silence for like 6 months now. So I don't know what's going on with them. It's very, very sad. If anybody out there knows, please tell me. But I can't recommend it anymore. I still use it. I love it. It's great, but I can't recommend it. Okay, so what the heck is it? Kino is and there's got to be other apps out there to replace it. I just haven't looked yet. Kino is an app for taking in all of your media. First of all, you can use it to copy off of your SD card if you're doing that, and automatically make a backup. But its primary thing is adding metadata to your shots. So I'll go through my shots and I add in my shot info, my take, shot, take, scene, all that stuff into the metadata. So I've got your scene column, take column, and so on. And then once you've organized all that there, which is way easier to organize here than it is in your NLE, once you've organized it all there, then you send the files over to your NLE. And so when it sends it over, whether you're sending it to Final Cut or to Resolve or Premiere Works as well, you get your files showing up there with all that metadata in place. It's just a way smoother, easier way to do it than going into the NLE and going shot by shot and adding that metadata. So I talked about earlier that I use slates for everything. When I'm shooting a video like this, I will slate everything. And so in there, you've got the video number, scene number, project number, whatever it is, your take, all of that metadata is on the slate. And so it's just a case of looking at the metadata on the slate and transposing it into the appropriate fields. So I love that. Now, these projects that I am talking about, the ones that specifically for Panasonic, all the editing was done in Final Cut. I have now started using Resolve, however. Same workflow, though, kind of sends into Resolve, sends into Final Cut, and yeah, it sends into Premiere for sure. So all the same. Okay, so sends it. I didn't do the editing on this project. I hired an editor for this. The editor was also remote. So we used PostLab for this. So Kino can actually also generate the proxy files, or Final Cut can do it. I think Resolve can. I'm still kind of new to Resolve. I think you can do that from Resolve as well. But either way, one way or another, you generate the proxy files. The proxy files go onto the PostLab drive, which is like a cloud. Think of it like a Dropbox or Amazon Drive or whatever, but it's kind of hosted by PostLab. And all the proxy files go in there. The project file is in Final Cut or Resolve inside of PostLab, and PostLab, my editor, can open that up from anywhere and edit. And so what happens is my editor would keep the PostLab drive running on their system. So as I load the proxy files into PostLab drive, they are automatically being cached on their side, immediately. As soon as I start copying files up, they start copying on their end as well. And so then by the time everything's copied over, they just open up a Final Cut project or Resolve project and start editing. They do their edits, they check it back into PostLab, I check it out, do my reviews, make any comments, maybe some changes, whatever, back and forth. And then the final step on that is to upload the project to frame.io for client review. So I'm in one location, client's in another location, editors in another location, but we're all working collaboratively here. The editor, it has access to Frame.io as well. So when the client makes notes in Frame.io, then I can make the changes, or my editor can make the changes. I can be like, hey, client wants this change, go change it, or I can just do it myself. Either way, we all have access to everything, and none of us have ever been physically in the same room together, which is just remarkable. Although I really do miss that. So with all that said, that was it. So here's just a screenshot from YouTube, the productions that we did for the BGH1. On the left there, we did 10 videos on that. On the S5 on the right, you can see we did 20, I can't see my thing, 21 videos. So a lot of videos, and it was all done through this workflow, 2 separate projects over 2 periods of time, all in the age of COVID, and none of us ever set foot in the same room or had to be in person for any of it. So that is how all that worked. That is my presentation. So now I've got time for Q&A. Let's talk about Mustafa's question. And if anybody else has any other questions, by all means, bring them up. Let's see, I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. Excuse me. And I think we're good. Okay. Sorry. Okay, Mustafa's question. How do you manage the cable runs for your set? Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of cables. But I said that this is interesting. I've got a thing on my screen that says waiting for the host to start this webinar. I hope this actually started, or we're in a lot of trouble. Okay. Mustafa's laughing, so I guess that means we're good. So I said in the beginning, or I said at some point, that the HyperDecks can run over PoE+, which is fantastic. So it eliminates having a power cable running to them as well. The BGH1 cameras also run over PoE+. So I've got a couple of PoE switches that allow me to power all my cameras, the HyperDecks, and so on. Since I want those cameras on the network, since I want the HyperDecks on the network, this allows me everything, right? I've got my connection, I've got my power, everything over a single cable. So that's beautiful. Let's see here. From the camera, it's HDMI out. The BGH1 has HDMI and SDI out. However, unfortunately, the SDI out is only 3G. So you only get HD out of it. You don't get 4K. So to get my 4K 30 signal, I need to go HDMI out. So it goes HDMI into a Blackmagic HDMI to SDI converter. I actually just had to upgrade all of those converters to the new 12G models for time code transfer. Kind of annoying, but the old 6G and 4K models don't do time code. I am feeding time code. So this wasn't in the slides at all because it's not critical, but it is a really nice component of this. I'm feeding time code into every camera and my audio recording. So everything has time code on it. I used to have time code embedded at the ATEM. So it's kind of a cool thing where I could feed time code into the ATEM. All the cameras came into the ATEM and then out to the HyperDecks, and they picked up time code along the way, which was fantastic. The problem with that is it's not as accurate as it could be. If for any reason a camera is delayed on its transfer, for whatever reason, there's some reason that it's a frame out of sync by the time it records, it's going to record with a frame off in the time code. So the technically more accurate way to do this is to feed the time code into the cameras so that the camera can then send the time code along with the video signal out through. So that's the way I have it set up now. I went through all this stuff on setting that up and then discovered at the end that my old 4K HDMI to SDI converters dropped time code. So that was a really nice surprise. I had to upgrade all of them to the 12G, the new 12G ones, which are now in place. So the 12G ones are in place. So now time code is going from the camera through the whole system into the recorders. So that's, that's cool. Okay. Audio. So this here, every camera has HDMI running out of it through a converter to eventually to SDI into the switching system. It's got Ethernet running into the system. And that's all it needs. But then I add time code. So I've got a time code tap going into each one. Don't have time now to talk about my whole new time code distribution system, but I'm going to be doing a video of that on my YouTube channel on how to do time code to up to 20 cameras at once with one time code generator. You'll want to watch that one if you're into time code. So that's it. That's all that needs to go in. So those 3 taps. So those 3 are running long lines back to the switcher. In my situation, everything is running through, I said that 40 by 40 matrix. So everything runs into the matrix and then runs out of the matrix into a variety of sources, but that's just me because I'm crazy. That's how that works. Audio. So the way that I do audio is I double record audio. I have 2 mics running. I'll wear a wireless lav because I do a lot of moving around when I'm doing my stuff and look down and up and walk around all over the place. I found that a shotgun mic, like I'm on a shotgun here, but I found that for my recorded videos, it just doesn't work. So I'm on a wireless lav. Plus, I do have a shotgun mic as a backup. This is kind of pointed partially, and some of this audio setup is actually quite new. So nobody has seen a single video done with this setup yet because I just finished building this kind of new audio rig. But the mic is pointed somewhat at the table so that it can pick up more audio as I'm playing with things. So I get a little bit more, what do you call that? People do the sound videos. Yeah, anyway, wherever you get the whole, like you experience the sound of me unwrapping something, all that stuff. So I get more of that audio I can pull from, but it also gives me a backup if I bump my mic and I got a thump on it and I need to cut away, and that's fantastic. So I have that cutaway to go to. The audio is routing into a Mix Pre 3. And the Mix Pre has 3 inputs. I'm using 2 of them, 2 inputs going in, and that's being recorded to the SD card as a multi-track file. The PreSonus has something called Noise Assist. It's a plugin and an add-on that does noise reduction in real time. It's marvelous. The room that I record in, my rack is in the same room. It's a big warehouse space, and so there's a lot of background noise. And so I've worked really hard over the years to kind of reduce this more and more. My sound setup right now is I have the Noise Assist plugin, which is pulling noise, and I just replaced the microphone itself on my lav with a what do you call it? Cardioid mic instead of an omnidirectional mic. And between those 2 things, a cardioid mic here and the Noise Assist plugin running, it's almost dead silent. It's amazing how much better the sound is. I'm so happy with the setup. So anyway, so there's that. And then again, I've got that thing to pick up, if I hit a bump or whatever, I got that backup. So both of those audio tracks are on the same file. Time code is running into the audio recorder. So the time code's written onto there. And then let's see. Oh, this is kind of a cool thing. So that audio recorder is plugged into a PC that I have in the rack. And I can then mount the recorder. I just walk up to the PreSonus and I like 2 buttons, and it puts it into disk mode and it mounts on the computer. And then when I'm transferring all the files over FTP, I can't do it over FTP, but in the Finder, I mount that PC and drag the files over the network from there as well. So I don't actually have to pop a single SD card. Everything is accessible over the network, which is really, really awesome. David's asking how noticeable are the noise reduction artifacts? Non-existent. It's so good. If you turn it up too high, the noise reduction has a level, right? I don't remember what it is. Let's say 1 to 10. I don't remember. If you set it up too high, then you will hear it. But like any noise reduction, you just find that threshold. It's beautiful. It's remarkable how good it is. Noise Assist on the Mix Pre is magic. You combine that with a cardioid mic instead of an Omni mic, and you will be absolutely blown away at how loud of an environment you can be in and still get really clean audio. And you could always add noise reduction software on top of that if you need it, which would be better than like if by the time you got it silent enough, you were hearing artifacts, hearing the warbles or whatever, then I would turn the Noise Assist to a point where, yeah, you still get some background noise, but there's no warbling, and then do a simple Noise Assist plugin in software. That's what I used to have to do. So that's how it used to be done, which is pretty great. Okay. what else we're talking about as far as cabling goes? That's the basic gist of it, right? It's just there's a lot of cabling. To give you an idea of how much cabling there is, I started making my own SDI cables. I've been making my own Ethernet cables for years. I started making my own SDI cables. Bought a 1,000-foot spool of cables so that I could just make them for as much as I need. It's kind of ridiculous, but hey, at the end of the day, it definitely saves money doing that. So yes, that's how it works. Okay, that's everything that I got to talk about here. Is there anything else you guys want to ask? Otherwise, I think we're ready to wrap this thing up. I want more questions. Come on, guys. Give me some more questions. It's super fun. This stuff is super geeky, but really cool. Do you ever wish HDMI never existed? David asks. There are moments. HDMI can be a pain, but the advantage, if anybody's wondering, anybody watching this doesn't know the advantage of HDMI over SDI. SDI transmits video. It transmits audio. It transmits time code. It's everything you need. You can have really, really long runs. The cable's thin. It's awesome. The problem is it's only one directional. SDI data can only transmit one way. HDMI allows data to go both ways. And this is required for a lot of things. So your general television and like if you got an Apple TV hooked up to your TV, that HDMI cable is allowing the two to talk back and forth to each other. If you're using an ATEM, one of the newer ATEM switchers, which are HDMI, so your ATEM mini setup, and one of the pocket cinema cameras, it's that HDMI cable that allows you to start and stop recording in the camera, to transmit time code to the camera from the switcher, to tell the camera which one's on air so that the red light comes on the camera. That's all only possible over HDMI. Without it, you actually have to run two SDI cables. And the older Blackmagic studio cameras ran with two SDI cables. You had to run a to cable and a from cable, or you know what I mean? You had to run two cables to transmit data both ways. So HDMI is great for that. But yeah, SDI is awesome. SDI is great. Okay. David says, I know the benefits of two-way, but as an interface itself, I hate it. Yeah. One of the other big problems with HDMI is just the physical connection, right? The full size, the type A connection, the big one, that's pretty good, right? It's pretty solid, but it's not locking. SDI is locking. You push it in, twist, and it pops out a little bit, and now it's locked into place. And you can even get SDI locking cables, which once that, and I'm not talking to you, David, I'm talking to everybody else. Once so that it goes on, so you push it, it's like a little spring loaded, it pushes in, twists and pops back, and now it's in place. But then there's a collar you can screw down, so it's impossible to remove it. That's pretty nice. Yeah, HDMI's got nothing on that. And then of course there's mini and micro HDMI, which are made by the devil, which things should be banned from existence, but there we go. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Other questions? Come on, give me some questions. I guess I'm doing a Q&A after this as well. I have no idea what it is. I've just asked to be there. For all I know, we're talking about the weather or barbecue, which is always another good topic. Anything else? Nobody else got questions? See in the chat. Tell us what you really feel about mini and micro HDMI. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing. Remember, there's a chat and there's the questions. Don't forget, if you have a real question, drop it into the questions. But I do have both windows open. Ben says in the chat, ever look into setstream.io? I have not. I don't know what that is. Never heard of it. I'm going to pull that up. That's the problem with doing events like this. I learn about new things that I'm like, oh, I need that. I don't need it. What is it? I probably need it. Setstream.io. Never seen it. Mustafa says, thank you. You are quite welcome. Setstream is, what is this? Virtual Video Village, securely live stream from set to anywhere in the world. Oh, neat. View and collaborate remotely on it. It's like exactly what I did, but it's a turnkey system. Neat. I will have to look into this. Very cool. Okay, everybody check out setstream.io. Maybe you don't need any of what I talked about and you can do it all with one setup. No idea, but that's cool. Thank you. Let's see here. Anything else? Let's see here. Oh, there's another question here. Sorry. Let's see here. How do I mark these questions as answered? That doesn't matter. David says, also a blow to the deaf community, people who bought DVD players with HDMI out and then wondered why they can no longer turn on CA 608 on their TV. DVD players with HDMI out. That was, I missed because that's HDMI. That was something that worked with it. I don't understand. I don't understand. Sorry. Mitch says, ATEM doesn't work with NDI, but are using NDI in your studio. I am not. I'm not using NDI anywhere in my studio. NDI, for those who don't know, think of it like SDI, but over a network. It's fantastic. You aren't going to get as good a video quality as you get over SDI, but it is very, very good. I think 50 megabit, 100 megabit. I forget what the, maybe there is no theoretical maximum. Maybe it's only based off your bandwidth. But anyway, it's great. NDI is awesome. I'm not using it anywhere. If, let's see here. So the BGH1 and BS1H both can send video over RTMP or RTP, not over NDI. But let's see here. If you had the capability to send video over NDI and then you had NDI receiving, then you could do it all wirelessly or more, you know, with more reliability, you would do it over a wired network. So you don't really want to go full Wi-Fi on it, but you go wired network. That would eliminate the SDI cable, which would obviously be very convenient. You'd have a whole different switching setup, receiving setup to do that. You can buy NDI to HDMI or NDI to SDI boxes. So you'd have to have one of those boxes to pick up the signal for each input, which, you know, is a reasonable way to do things. But yeah, if everything was NDI based, if the quality was there, the cameras were transmitting NDI over the network, and then you just have a bank of recorders with NDI, that would be very, very cool for sure. But no, I'm not using it right now, but that would be awesome. What's your take on NFTs? I like NFT. I'm all in on it. I did a whole video. If you go to my just search on YouTube, search PhotoJoseph NFT, you'll find it. I did a couple of I did a live video about NFT. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's an interesting thing, and I do think it's going to be a big part of the future. Let's see here. David saying, talking about the embedded closed captioning, the CEA 608 and 708. I don't understand what you're saying about why deaf people got lost out on that. Is that not transmitted over HDMI? Because that's the part that I don't understand what you're saying. Okay. NDI's latency and bandwidth 100 megabit. Okay, so 100 is the max. Requirements limited. So there you go. So NDI is currently limited to 100 megabit. I was pretty sure there was a limit. So it's 100, which, you know, my HyperDeck recorders recording the ProRes are getting, what is it, 800 megabit. So, you know, it's quite a bit better. Even in camera, if I was recording in camera, I could record up to 400 megabit in camera. So yeah, 100 megabit, 100 megabits, pretty limited. Great for live. God, really, really awesome for live. But as a mastering format, you're probably not so good. AB Anderson says, is NDI the network connection that Blackmagic is using in their new cameras? I don't know. I'm not super up to date on the latest Blackmagic cameras. Being a Lumix ambassador and a Lumix guy, that's where I focus my attention for the most part. I learn about other things kind of as they come up on the side, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. If it is built in, that would be cool. That would very, very much be cool. I think all cameras, having the BGH ones now, if you're not familiar with the BGH ones, on my YouTube channel, I did a video late last year called 5 times BGH ones, and it's this explanation of the BGH ones and why I'm using 5 of them in my setup, how that's all in place. It's all there. So go check out that video. Ever since using them, where I have network access, I can control the cameras from software on a computer. That's like, once you get that, there's no going back. You're going, dude, every camera needs this. It's so awesome to be able to control your cameras over the network like that. Every camera ever made needs to have that. It's such a great functionality. So cool. So cool.